It began on a quiet morning in Ohio. A little girl kissed her mother goodbye and never made it to school. For 8 years, her name was a whisper. Her bedroom frozen in time. Her mother searching every corner, every shadow, refusing to let go. Then, one ordinary day, while scrolling through Google Street View, a single image appeared. A man, a child, and a red backpack with a patch. No one else could have known. What followed would tear open secrets, shatter lies, and lead to a discovery no one thought possible. The morning air in Fairfield, Ohio, was cool and ordinary. On Maplewood Drive, sunlight broke through thin clouds, lighting up quiet rows of white houses and trimmed lawns. 7-year-old Olivia Morgan tied the straps of her bright red backpack, kissed her mother on the cheek, and walked out the door. Her route to school was simple. 5 short blocks, past the corner bakery, across 2 narrow streets, then straight to Jefferson Elementary. She had walked it dozens of times before, each step so familiar that her mother, Rachel, never thought twice about it. But that Monday was different. The date was April 7th, 2010, a day that began like every other, but would split Rachel's life into before and after. Inside the classroom, the bell rang. Children shuffled into their desks, pencils tapping, chairs scraping against tile floors. But Olivia's chair stayed empty. At first, her teacher thought she was running late. Minutes stretched, then an hour. Finally, the call was made. Rachel answered, confused and trembling, when she heard the words no parent ever wants to hear. Olivia never arrived at school this morning. Panic spread like fire. Rachel ran the route herself, calling her daughter's name into the wind, searching every corner, every bush, every face. Police were called. Neighbors joined the search, but the little girl with auburn hair and a red backpack had vanished without a trace. The days became weeks. Flyers plastered on lampposts, candlelight vigils outside Jefferson Elementary. Detective Samuel Pierce, seasoned and steady, led the investigation. He knocked on doors, interviewed witnesses, studied security footage from nearby stores, but no solid lead emerged. Rachel clung to hope. She left Olivia's bedroom untouched, the walls still painted lavender, the stuffed bear peanut resting neatly on the pillow, the red backpack's twin.
Mom was by much boy
sat in the closet like a shrine. 8 years passed. The world moved forward, but Rachel stayed frozen in that April morning. Her face grew thinner, her auburn hair streaked with gray, her eyes carrying the weight of sleepless nights. Her kitchen table became an archive of obsession, stacks of newspapers, yellowed flyers, FBI age progression photos, a coffee mug, always half full, always gone cold. Friends drifted away. Family begged her to move on, but Rachel could not. The ache in her chest was too heavy, the silence in Olivia's room too loud. At 39, she looked closer to 50. Grief had carved deep lines across her face. Her mornings were rituals of hopeless searching, scrolling through forums, reading about missing children, cases that ended with tragedy. One morning, the phone rang. It was her therapist's office. Cheerful voice on the line. Mrs. Morgan, we've moved to a new location. I'll text you the address at Riverbend Plaza. Rachel scribbled the address, her hand trembling. She rarely left her neighborhood anymore, especially near Jefferson Elementary. That street was a wound she refused to reopen. But when the text arrived, the address pulled her back. The fastest route ran directly past the school. Her heart clenched, but curiosity made her open Google Maps. Her finger hovered. For a moment, she considered closing the app, finding another doctor, choosing another path. But she pressed Street View. The blue line lit up the screen. Pixel by pixel, the old neighborhood came alive. Houses she once knew, sidewalks she once walked, frozen in the digital eye of a camera car. She clicked forward. There was the bakery, where Olivia loved powdered donuts. There was the library, where Olivia had whispered proudly the first time she signed her own card. Each click felt like pressing on a bruise. And then she reached Jefferson Elementary. The yellow brick walls, the familiar crosswalk where the old crossing guard used to wave. Rachel's breath caught. Her fingers shook as she clicked forward again. On the right edge of the screen, barely in frame, two figures appeared. An adult, tall, shoulders broad, wearing a dark jacket and baseball cap. Beside him, a child in a navy blue jumper and white blouse, a small hand clasped in his. The child carried a red backpack, not just any red backpack. Sewn onto the front strap was a patch shaped like a gray bear with stitched pink ears. The same patch Rachel had sewn the night before Olivia's first day of school. Her vision blurred with tears, her lips parted in disbelief. This wasn't imagination, wasn't wishful grief. It was there captured, frozen in time. She zoomed in again and again. The resolution was poor, the adult's face blurred, but the backpack was unmistakable. The timestamp in the corner read April 7th, 2010. The very morning Olivia vanished. Her chest heaved as the weight of 8 years shifted in an instant. Rachel clutched the laptop like it might vanish if she blinked. She took screenshots from every angle, saving them in frantic bursts. Her heart pounded as if she were running a race. She had waited 8 years to start. For so long, she had prayed for proof her daughter was alive. Now, a random image on Google Street View offered it. Evidence, not just hope. She whispered into the empty kitchen, "Oh my God, that's her." Her voice cracked, half laughter, half sob. Rachel pushed back her chair, nearly toppling it. She grabbed her keys, her phone, the laptop still open with the image glowing on the screen. This time, she would not wait. At the police station, Detective Pierce looked up from his desk. 8 years had aged him too, though in his case, it was quiet resignation. But when Rachel burst in, clutching her phone with trembling hands, the weariness in his eyes sharpened. "Detective," she gasped. "I found something. You need to see this." He motioned her inside. Already sensing the urgency, Rachel set the phone on his desk. The image filled the screen. Pierce leaned forward. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. He studied the date, the details, the red backpack. This is the first real lead we've had in 8 years. Rachel gripped the edge of the desk, her knuckles white. "Then let's find her," she whispered. Detective Samuel Pierce stared at the photo for a long time. His fingers tapped the desk, the rhythm uneven. He looked older, but now his eyes carried something Rachel hadn't seen in years. Focus. The date matches, the backpack matches, and the girl's height fits. He leaned back. exhaling slowly. Rachel, this could change everything. Her pulse raced. For years she had begged for action, pleaded with investigators to keep searching. Now, for the first time, someone was listening again. Pierce picked up the phone. He called the state crime lab. His voice clipped and direct. I need metadata from a Google Street View image. Timestamped April 7th. 2010. Priority request. Rachel gripped her bag. What does this mean? Where do we start? Pierce grabbed a thick folder. Olivia's case file, its corners worn from years of handling. We start by revisiting every single lead, he said, and we start with people who were at Jefferson Elementary that morning. Rachel nodded, determination replacing fear. The next morning, Rachel forced herself back to Jefferson Elementary. The building loomed like a memory she had avoided for nearly a decade. Her steps echoed on the polished floor as she entered the main office. A familiar voice called her name. Mrs. Karen Lowell, Olivia's former kindergarten teacher, appeared from a nearby classroom. Her hair had grayed, but her eyes still carried warmth. Rachel Morgan, she whispered. Her expression softened into concern. I can't believe it's been so long. Rachel pulled out her phone, showing her the street view photo. This was taken the day Olivia disappeared. Look at the backpack. Mrs. Lowell adjusted her glasses, her face paling. My God, that's the same one you stitched with the bare patch. Her hand trembled as she passed the phone back. Rachel, this isn't just coincidence. Rachel's voice was low, steady. I need to know who was here that morning. Teachers, staff, anyone. Mrs. Lowell sighed, remembering we went through everyone back then. Parents, volunteers, janitors, bus drivers. She paused, then added softly, but no one took it harder than Mr. Caldwell. Rachel stiffened at the name. Thomas Caldwell, the principal. Yes, he blamed himself, said stricter safety rules could have prevented it. He retired a few years later. It broke him. Her words lingered like smoke in the air. Rachel pressed further. Do you know where he lives now? Mrs. Lowell thought for a moment. Out near Riverbend Court, I think. New housing development. Quiet place. Her voice carried hesitation. Rachel, I know what you're thinking. Don't go after him yourself. But Rachel's mind was already racing. That night, she sat at a computer terminal in the Fairfield library. She searched through public records, property transfers, retirement notices. Caldwell's old house had been sold. No social media accounts. But one detail repeated Riverbend Court. The librarian noticed her frustration. Looking for someone, she asked kindly. Thomas Caldwell, Rachel admitted. Oh yes, he comes here sometimes. Borrows books about child development. Very polite. The words made Rachel's stomach twist. Why would a retired principal still study child psychology? She left the library unsettled. Caldwell was out there, living quietly, hidden behind a facade of normalcy, and somewhere in her gut, Rachel felt he was tied to Olivia's disappearance. The next day, Rachel drove through Riverbend Court. Identical homes lined the streets, manicured lawns and identical mailboxes. Her car crawled past them, searching for a sign. She stopped at a security booth near the entrance. Excuse me, she said, trying to sound casual. I'm looking for an old colleague. Thomas Caldwell. The guard folded his newspaper. Caldwell. Yeah. Nice guy. Lives at 118 Willow Bend. Gray house with the silver Honda. Rachel's breath caught. She parked 2 houses away. Her palms were damp, her heart thudding. For minutes, she sat frozen, rehearsing what to say. Finally, she walked to the front door, and rang the bell. Footsteps approached. The door opened. There he was, tall, thin, gray hair combed neatly, glasses perched on his nose. For a moment, his expression was polite surprise. "Mrs. Morgan," he said slowly. His voice carried a strange mix of familiarity and weariness. "What brings you here after so many years?" Rachel forced a smile. "Mr. Caldwell, I need to ask you about Olivia's case. There have been new developments." His hand tightened on the doorframe. "New developments." His eyes flickered. "I'm not sure what help I can be after all this time." From inside, a voice drifted out. "Dad." "Who's at the door?" A young girl's voice. Mid-teen, slightly hesitant. Rachel's chest tightened instantly. Caldwell stepped forward, blocking the doorway. "That's my niece," he said quickly. "She lives with me now. Lost her parents years back." Rachel's eyes searched his face. Her mind screamed at the way the girl had spoken. The lisp, the same subtle lisp Olivia once had. "I see," Rachel managed, her voice thin. "I won't keep you long. Just wanted to let you know. The police are reopening the case." Caldwell's jaw stiffened. "What kind of evidence?" he asked sharply. "Just a photograph. A man with a child. Same day Olivia disappeared." His eyes went still. Behind him, faint footsteps crossed the floor. Rachel glimpsed a shadow, the outline of a young girl moving closer. Caldwell pulled the door nearly shut. "She's shy," he said quickly. "It's not a good time. Call ahead next time, Mrs. Morgan." His voice was firm, final. Rachel nodded, but her pulse hammered. She stepped back, pretending to leave, but her eyes lingered on the window. For a split second, a curtain shifted. A girl's face appeared in the glass. Dark hair, older features. Sometimes. But the same deep brown eyes. Rachel's breath stopped. Even at 14, even changed, those eyes were unmistakable. Her daughter was staring back at her. She stumbled back to her car, heart racing, hands trembling. Her phone shook as she dialed Detective Pierce. "Mark, it's Rachel. I think I found her. I think she's alive." Rachel's voice shook as she left the message. Her eyes stayed fixed on Caldwell's house, curtains twitching. Every instinct screamed the same truth. Olivia was alive. Minutes later, the silver Honda pulled out of the driveway, Caldwell at the wheel, shoulders rigid. In the passenger seat, a girl's silhouette, head turned toward the window. Rachel's heart nearly burst. She started her car, trailing 2 blocks behind. Her fingers fumbled with the phone as she called Detective Pierce again. "He's moving," she whispered. Silver Honda, heading north on Route 41. Her tires squealed as she followed. Pierce's voice came through the speaker, clipped and urgent. "Stay back. Rachel, units are converging. Do not approach alone." But staying back was impossible. The Honda gained speed, weaving through traffic. Rachel pressed harder on the gas, her knuckles white on the steering wheel every second. Sun mattered. The car veered off the main highway. Caldwell took the exit toward Oak Ridge Forest, a dense stretch of pine and dirt trails. Rachel's chest tightened, thousands of places to hide, endless ways to vanish. Her phone buzzed again. "Units are on the way, but the forest roads are too narrow for cruisers," Pierce warned. "Hold position if you lose sight." But she wouldn't lose sight. Not after 8 years. She turned onto the dirt road. Branches Scraping her windows, dust clouded the air. Through the trees, she glimpsed the flicker of taillights. Her stomach knotted with dread and hope tangled together. The road ended at a clearing, an abandoned campground, fire pits long cold, picnic tables rotting with age. The Honda skidded to a stop at the far edge. Rachel killed her headlights and coasted to the side. She slipped out of the car, crouching behind a cluster of pines. Her breath came fast, sharp, every sound amplified. Caldwell moved quickly, pulling gear from the trunk, a rolled tent, sleeping bags, cans of food. He had prepared for this moment. The girl stood nearby, arms wrapped around herself, her sweater too big, her shoulders tense. Rachel's throat tightened at the sight. "Claire, sweetheart," Caldwell urged. "We can't stay here. We have to keep moving." His voice cracked with urgency. The girl looked up at him, frightened. "Dad, why are we running? Who was that woman at the door?" Her voice wavered older, deeper, but achingly familiar. Rachel pressed a hand against the tree trunk. Tears burned her eyes. That voice, her daughter's voice. Caldwell crouched to meet the girl's eyes. "She wants to take you away. She'll confuse you with lies. But I won't let that happen." His hand cupped her face. Too gentle, too rehearsed. The girl's lip trembled. "She called me Olivia." Caldwell's expression hardened instantly. "She's wrong. You're Claire. Don't you remember the accident? Your parents are gone. I saved you." Each word was a chain, forged from years of manipulation. Rachel could barely breathe. She couldn't stay hidden any longer. Stepping out from the trees, she called softly, "Olivia." Both heads snapped toward her. The girl froze, eyes wide. Caldwell shoved her behind him, his hand darting inside his jacket. "Stay back," he shouted. His voice was no longer calm, but sharp with fury. Rachel lifted her hands, palms open. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want my daughter." Her voice cracked, but held steady. The girl peeked from behind him. Confusion etched across her face. "I'm not your daughter," she said, trembling. "My mother died. He told me." Her hand drifted unconsciously to the side of her neck. Rachel's chest broke open. "That birthmark, just below your ear. I kissed it every night for 7 years." The girl's fingers lingered there, eyes darting between them. Caldwell snarled. "She's confused. Don't listen. It's the trauma. I'm the only one who's protected you." He pulled a small pistol from his jacket, pointing it toward Rachel. Her breath caught, but she didn't move. "Olivia, do you remember your bedroom? Purple walls, glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling." The girl blinked, hesitation flashing across her face. I've dreamed of stars." Her whisper was fragile, uncertain. Rachel took a step forward. "And Peanut, your stuffed bear, the one you carried everywhere." The girl's lips parted, recognition stirring. Her eyes glistened. Caldwell tightened his grip on the pistol. "Stop. You're poisoning her." But his voice trembled now, cracks forming in his control. Rachel sang, barely above a whisper, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." The girl gasped. Her knees buckled as memories flooded back. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I know that song." Rachel's own tears blurred her vision. "Because I sang it to you every night." Olivia. The name hung heavy in the clearing. Sirens wailed in the distance, faint at first, then growing louder. Flashing lights pierced the trees. Caldwell's face twisted in desperation. "They'll say I kidnapped you, but I saved you. I gave you love. I gave you a life. His voice cracked, raw with delusion. The girl turned toward him, shaking. "You lied to me. For 8 years. You lied." Her words sliced through the clearing like glass. "Claire, no. Olivia, don't listen to her." He grabbed her arm, trying to pull her toward the forest trail. But this time, she resisted. Her feet stayed planted. Her eyes locked onto Rachel's. "Mom," she whispered, the word trembling but real. Rachel surged forward, closing the distance. The pistol swung toward her, but Olivia ripped her arm free. She ran, colliding with her mother's embrace. Rachel's arms wrapped around her, desperate, unbreakable. 8 years of searching collapsed into that moment. Olivia sobbed into her shoulder. "You're safe," Rachel whispered. "You're home." Every word was a vow. Police officers poured into the clearing, weapons raised. "Drop the gun," they shouted. Caldwell's shoulders slumped, his weapon falling into the dirt. He sank to his knees, sobbing. "I loved her. She was mine. She was all I had." The officers cuffed him and dragged him away. Rachel held Olivia tighter. She stroked her daughter's hair, whispering comfort. The girl's body shook with years of fear and release. The sirens faded, replaced by the sound of quiet sobs. Rachel pressed her cheek against Olivia's, breathing her in. After so long, the nightmare was breaking, but deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. Olivia had been found. Now they would both have to learn how to live again. The ambulance doors swung open at Fairfield General. Rachel held Olivia's hand as paramedics guided them inside. The girl's eyes darted around, unsure of everything but her mother's grip. Dr. Patricia Lane greeted them. Calm and steady, she examined Olivia with gentle precision. No injuries, no malnutrition. Physically, she's healthy. Rachel exhaled for the first time in hours. But Dr. Lane's tone shifted, her gaze more serious. Psychologically, the scars run deep. Olivia sat silent on the bed. Her fingers twisted the hem of her sweater. She finally whispered, "He said you were dead." Rachel's chest clenched. She smoothed Olivia's hair, tears sliding down her cheeks. "He lied to you. I never stopped searching, not one day." Dr. Lane nodded. "We'll need therapy. The memories he planted must be carefully unwound. It won't be quick." Rachel squeezed her daughter's hand. "I don't care how long it takes. She's here now." Olivia leaned against her, fragile but present. For the first time in 8 years, they breathed the same air without fear. Days turned into weeks. Therapists helped Olivia navigate nightmares and confusion. Rachel sat through every session, never letting her face slip from view. One afternoon, Olivia finally spoke what she'd held inside. "I love him, but I hate him too." Her voice cracked under the weight of contradictions. Rachel wrapped her arms around her. "It's okay to feel both. He cared for you, but what he did was wrong." Olivia buried her face in her mother's shoulder. 3 months later, a request surprised everyone. Olivia wanted to see Caldwell in custody. She needed answers that therapy couldn't give. The prison visiting room was cold and bright. Glass separated them, phones pressed to their ears. Caldwell looked smaller, his shoulders sagging beneath the orange uniform. He smiled weakly. "Claire." "No." Olivia interrupted. Her eyes burned. "My name is Olivia Morgan." The guard stiffened, watching. Caldwell's mouth trembled, but he nodded. "Olivia, you've grown." Her voice stayed firm. "I forgive you for feeding me, teaching me, reading to me." Tears slid down his wrinkled cheeks. but I'll never forgive you for the lies. You stole my life. You stole her from me. Rachel sat beside her daughter, listening as strength replaced fear. Caldwell lowered his gaze, unable to meet her eyes. I thought I was saving you, he whispered. You thought wrong, Olivia replied, her tone cut sharper than any judge could. Months passed, courtroom benches filled with press, townsfolk, and strangers chasing headlines. Rachel and Olivia sat side by side at the witness stand. The prosecutor's voice echoed. State your name. Olivia Catherine Morgan, she said, steady and clear. Tell us what happened on April 7th, 2010. She inhaled deeply, then spoke. I was walking to school. Mr. Caldwell told me my mother was in an accident. The courtroom fell silent. Her words painted 8 years of captivity, the lies, the homeschooling, the fake identity of Claire. She described the manipulation, how every memory of her real life was dismissed as confusion, how he convinced her that love was isolation. Rachel wiped silent tears. The jury leaned forward, eyes fixed on the girl who had survived. Even the judge shifted uncomfortably at the cruelty revealed. When asked how she felt now, Olivia didn't hesitate. Sorry for him, but what he did was selfish and cruel. Love doesn't steal. Love doesn't lie. Her voice carried across the courtroom like a bell. Caldwell sat at the defense table, weeping silently. He looked older than his years, hunched, defeated, but not even remorse could erase what he'd done. Judge Harrison spoke slowly, each word deliberate. Denied it, Mr. Caldwell. You kidnapped a child, built a world of lies, and trapped her there for 8 years. He paused, his gavel heavy in hand. For kidnapping, endangerment, and psychological abuse, this court sentences you to 30 years in state prison. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Caldwell closed his eyes, nodding faintly as guards led him away. Outside the courthouse, Rachel held Olivia close. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but the girl pressed her face against her mother's shoulder, shielding herself from the frenzy. Rachel whispered above the noise, "You don't have to answer anyone. You only owe yourself the truth." Olivia nodded, clinging tighter. A year later, September sunlight warmed Fairfield once more. The morning felt familiar, yet everything had changed. Rachel stood at the same corner where she had once begged for hope. Beside her, Olivia adjusted a new backpack, 15 now, taller, stronger, ready for high school. Her hand lingered in her mother's before she stepped forward. The front doors of Fairfield High opened wide. Laughter spilled into the air, welcoming her into the life she had been denied. Rachel watched her blend into a crowd of students, just another teenager at last. Detective Pierce approached, with a coffee in hand. "She looks good," he said softly. Rachel smiled for real this time. "She's better every day. She sings again, joins clubs, laughs with friends." Her eyes shone as she added, "She's not the girl he created. She's not the girl I lost. She's her own." Pierce nodded, satisfied. Rachel looked back at the school. The building that once symbolized tragedy now promised new beginnings. Olivia turned once at the doorway, catching her mother's gaze. Rachel waved, pride swelling. For the first time, the words in her heart carried no desperation, only joy. "She's home," she whispered. Down the street, unnoticed, a Google Street View car rolled past. Its lens captured a mother smiling, a daughter laughing, ordinary life resuming. Not evidence of loss this time, but proof of survival.